what do you see happening around end customer self-service? Do you see a trend happening? Is there any patterns that you're seeing in the market?
I think there's definitely still a trend towards self-service. I think it's been a lot slower than I've anticipated personally, outside of any of the key vendors. Like, as we know, you can go to AWS these days and Azure and spin things up, but that's only kind of a tiny piece of the puzzle. I go back to, I think probably 2014 maybe, and I was working in a mid-sized MSP tech that got acquired by a global one now actually. And back then, things could get so bad sometimes where a customer would order a VM and it would be through the portal. So we had a portal, so the kind of right ideas were there, but the portal, they'd order on the portal, and but then it would generate an email to someone. So some of these got lost. So 6 months later, a customer's still saying, "Can I have my machine, please?" And in the end, it became a bit of a, we had a new leadership team came in and it was like, well, we can't, this is ridiculous. And I think at that point, they got it down to about 2 to 4 weeks for a VM to be stood up. And the mission as we were given was basically, if a customer requests a VM, it needs to be up within 48 hours, full stop. And back then that was still fairly reasonable, but that still entailed, someone requests on the portal, it triggered this kind of task, and we were using ServiceNow actually at the time, and it would trigger the task to the build team. So we cut out email, we cut out the mess, and we kind of put it into tasks, and we brought in notifications and dashboards and alerts to really at least try and get this 48-hour thing, But even back then, we were talking about things like in ServiceNow where we have, cloud management and other things like that, where it can spin up these VMs automatically. And I think the end customers want that. And I think the MSPs themselves want to be able to provide it. But I think in a lot of cases, it's probably this stuff that holds them back from doing that, because they don't have the standardized catalog to some degree and the standardized pricing model and so on. When they come to look at that project, they're like, well, they end up maybe piloting it with a few of the top clients who've got the standard books and stuff, because they go, okay, we can give it to those 3 easily. But when they've got 100, 500, 1,000 clients with all different price books and different products, they look at the size of the investment of time and money to get that in place, and they struggle to justify it to themselves or to their board or whatever. But I think where we see it now, the tide turning, is that people aren't willing to make that investment for whatever reason and do that. They're going to become the did runs. They're the guys that kind of ran as well, because customers are, as we talk about in all parts of tech these days, is we expect a consumer grade experience in the enterprise now, whether that is live chat, virtual agent, or whatever the tech may be. But we don't expect to go in and clunk around on forms and have phone calls and 10 different emails and a wet signature and wait 2 weeks for something. So I think, and I think that's finally now forced to the point where if you can't provide an experience that's kind of at least close to that consumer grade, or however you want to define it, then eventually your customers are just going to drop off, because the perception of that is that you either can't do it or you're not good enough to do it. And if you're supposed to be the tech MSP provider, you should be surely the best at providing that slick cutting edge feel. And I think that's really pushed it. So I think customer sentiment is there on the end customer, and I think the desire is there in the teams and MSPs. And I think we're seeing now that tide turning where some of them are going for it and they're really going for it. They're putting money behind it, the board are behind it. They're like, let's make this big change, or they're still struggling and fighting. And I think those customers a lot of the time for me they're also the ones that don't invest enough in ServiceNow, because ServiceNow, for the customers it really works for, they're either very, very simple organizations and they don't need to get into a complex thing with ServiceNow, or they do need to invest to get the best out of it, and they don't. They want to kind of do pieces and bits, and where we see the people getting the most value are the ones that really say, okay, this is going to be a strategic platform at the center of the business. So wherever we can, we'll use ServiceNow. We won't go outside where we can't. And if we do use ServiceNow, like with you guys, is there an app available? Is there a specialist that we can bolt still into ServiceNow and keep it as that orchestrator? Where they really make that strategic decision up front and then say, we're going to invest on a long term for this tool. There'll be an annual budget to the development and the consultancy and everything else. That value becomes exponential. And I think those are the same customers then that see tools like servicePath and other tools that this is a great investment and we're going to keep maintaining this product, because servicePath, I imagine, like a CMDB, is only as good as the data that's in it on a given day. So unless someone puts the underlying processes in to maintain the service path data and keep the product book and price book updated, it becomes out of date and becomes out of fashion again. People just go back to manual, don't they? It's kind of the equivalent of techies. If the CMDB is bad, they go back to the diagrams they've got handwritten or stored somewhere. So yeah, I just think those customers that are really up for that strategic investment, keeping their eyes on the prize, they're the ones that tend to really crush it, both through ServiceNow and bringing products like yours in. And I think they're the ones that we do see bigger growth rates on their revenue, bigger customer satisfaction scores. And obviously, as we know, that just compounds and leads to kind of winners in the end.